Who here is interested in GenAI? Cool, you're in the right place. I'm Eric.
My name is Andre.
And we are...
Oh God, don't.
Just kidding.
All things web.
Thank you everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you AWS for hosting us. Where are you, Eric?
Oh my God, here.
Thank you. I think we're gonna try to keep it really short in the intro here because we have 5 amazing talks. So if you've not been to an All Things Web event before, welcome. And please follow us on Luma or just go to allthingsweb.dev. We have a Discord on there. This last month plus alone, there's been a bunch of events. We just keep on doing awesome events, having awesome hosts.
Do you want to say what's next? What is our next event?
I mean, is it open for signups?
Yeah,
okay.
Of course.
Everybody race to. It's the Future of Web Hackathon at Sentry. So in just a few weeks, it's an all-day event on a Saturday, I think.
All-day event on a Saturday. We're gonna do hacking. So bring your laptop, sit down on a Saturday with us, and enjoy whatever you want to hack on. And maybe you win some cool prizes too. And if you want to find all our future events, our Discord, our YouTube channel, a community maybe, scan this QR code. It goes to allthingsweb.dev and you can find all further links just there. Cool. Thank you so much for AWS for hosting us. This is an amazing event space. We will probably come back.
Hopefully.
And we also have a little gift from AWS. Yes. Do you want to do some words?
Hey everybody, my name's Eric as well. So we are trying to get more and more spaces, more and more meetups here at the GenAI Loft. So we have this survey here. If you scan this with your phone, just take it. It just takes, 30 seconds, a minute, and you get a free $25 AWS credit for Bedrock and Nova, and just to try out AWS services. Yeah, so check it out. Thanks for you guys. Hopefully we can, do this again sometime.
Just a quick question. Let's say someone's already using AWS Bedrock. If they fill out the survey, do they still get $25 of credit?
Yeah. Yeah, you can stack these credits. So.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I definitely need more. Cool.
So the food is also provided by Neon, and I work for Neon, so it would be kind of boring if I pitch it. So I'm gonna force Eric to say a few words about Neon.
Who here likes setting up and managing their own Postgres?
Through Neon.
Through Neon, yes. So Neon, serverless Postgres. Don't worry about anything. Scale infinitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't work for Neon, so I can just say all these things. But yeah, also thank you, Neon, for being an amazing sponsor of All Things Web and the local community.
Cool. So we have a stacked panel of cool speakers today. Ted, unfortunately, has a cold and can't make it, but we have a surprise speaker who may chime in. But we're going to kick it off with Sean.
Yeah. Please.
That's when you clap.
Hello, everyone. Great to meet you. My name is Sean. I head up a lot of our technical partnerships at Anthropic. Quick show of hands, how many of you guys have heard of Anthropic before? That's great. How many of you all have heard of Sonnet 3.7 before?
Yeah.
And how many of you all have heard of Claude Code before? And keep your hands up if you've used Claude Code before. Okay. Well, this will be a really fun demo for those of you that have used Claude Code and those of you that have not. But today we're going to be building an application with Claude Code. Now, what is Claude Code? It's an agentic coding tool that runs directly in your terminal. So you can install it in one line using npm. It OAuths into your Anthropic account. And then from there, you can get started and start coding agentively with Claude Code. Now, how many of you all have seen Claude Plays Pokemon online? Raise your hand. Oh, that's not that many. So actually right now, as we're all here, Claude is playing Pokemon. And so you can actually go onto Twitch and you can watch Claude agentively navigate the Pokemon game. Claude just broke past Mount Doom and is making its way towards the final four. And we're really excited about Pokemon and Claude. But today, we're going to be using Claude to build a variant of Pokemon. Pokemon's kind of a big game, but we're going to create a simpler version called Emojimon. So my vision for Emojimon is we're going to create a lightweight Pokemon game that runs as a simple website. To get that started, all I have to do here is chat with Claude. So you'll watch me now fire up Claude Code and then issue that first command. Excellent. And now Claude Code is off to the races. So Claude first is going to check our set of files, which currently are empty. It's going to come up with a plan to implement Emojimon, and then it's going to create our simple website here. So as you notice, Claude Code, again, is running directly in my terminal. Claude Code is great for use cases like this. So let's say you're spinning up a new demo. Let's say you're creating a really great game. Let's say you want to get a specific feature out as an MVP. Claude Code is really great at going 0 to 1 and uses our state-of-the-art models with Sonnet 3.7 paired with a lot of the research that we've done around agents to give you all the best experience here when it comes to coding with AI. Claude Code isn't just limited, though, to new projects like we're going to be doing today. It's also great at existing projects. So again, it's just an easy install into your terminal. And for any existing code base, it can traverse that and start to make intelligent edits there as well. Some use cases for Claude Code in the case where you are using it on an existing repo. Really popular one is just chatting with your code, right? And so if you're onboarding a new developer, you fire up Claude Code, and they can start to chat with the code base and understand what's going on. From there, they can start to make edits as well. So Claude Code will agentively search your code and implement the correct changes at the right time. Cool. So Claude Code continues to cook. That's great. Some use cases that Claude Code is great at when it comes to editing your existing code base are going to be things like fixing bugs. Especially UI bugs, you can actually feed images to Claude Code, which I'll show later. But Claude Code is really great at fixing bugs. It's also great at more tedious coding tasks. So let's say you need to do something like you want to implement a lot of unit tests, but you might not want to write all of those unit tests. Claude Code's going to do a very good job at being able to go through your code base and implement those. So if it comes to like writing existing unit tests into your code base, Claude Code is going to be your best friend. The last thing here is Claude Code can also run directly in your CLI as a command. So you can imagine a situation where you might want to be running a CI/CD pipeline. You can just prompt Claude Code to perform certain commands or certain manual checks on your code base before it eventually gets launched to production. So we even use this internally. If you push new code, then Claude Code can edit. Great. So Claude Code here wants to make an edit. It's going to ask us for permission to either edit this one file or continue to edit. I trust Claude Code, so I'm going to allow it to continue to edit. And here it's made a couple different changes. We have a basic Emojimon game, and let's see how it works. So we'll go here to the files that it just created. Cool. We got game.js. Let's fire it up. Cool. So we have our Emojimon collection. Great. So we can start to edit this from here. So maybe a first edit is that I can't see what's going on below the close button. So I'm going to ask Claude Code here to make sure it's interactable and not block out the rest of my screen. So let's do that. Oh, I'm clicking close. So we'll ask Claude Code to make that change. We'll go full screen. See the close button. Please fix. So this is my theory, but the nicer you are to Claude Code, the more performant it is. So you notice there, I threw in that please fix smiley face. I'm not officially sanctioned to say that that's the best way to use Claude Code, but you can try it out and see. But what Claude's going to do here is, again, just look through the code base, figure out where some of these issues are, where the styling might have broken, and then I will refresh here. Great, and we have Emojimon. Let's get a round of applause for Claude, who got there in the end. So it looks like we are here, and I'm not that good at Emojimon, but I need all of your help in navigating here. So crucial question, should we go left or right? Left, right. Woo! Right. We're going to go right. Well, let's go up to this B up here. Okay. Ooh. Looks like we got ourselves a battle. So we have a BuzzOG over here versus my Smiley Mom, it looks like. I'm going to begin the battle. Dealing some decent damage here to BuzzOG. Now the key question is going to be, when do we want to capture BuzzOG? So I'm going to need a little bit of crowd participation. Do you guys think we should go for another attack, or should we go to capture BuzzMoji here? Capture. Correct answer. Okay, that didn't work. We'll try again. All right, excellent. And it looks like I have coins as well, which is even better. So this is looking pretty good. I'm fairly happy with this first version of Emojimon, but I'm going to be honest, I've been dreaming about Emojimon for a long time. And I actually have some comprehensive designs that I put together here for Emojimon that I want to see in this game. So what I'm going to do over here is just tell Claude Code. I'm going to drag over emojimon.png, and I'm going to say, please add these Emojimon. Excellent. I'll give it access here to read that file. And while it goes and implements my wildest dreams of having more complex emojis, we can continue our journey. So we're at 80 coins, and it looks like we've captured one of 8. Okay, a Dragamon. Excellent. But looks like Claude Code is finished over here, so we'll do a quick refresh. And I'm seeing my BuzzOG, I'm seeing a Normoji, and my RockOG as well. While I'm about to go on another adventure, what I'm going to do is ask it to add health bars. I don't know if you guys saw, there were no health bars, which is pretty critical information if you're trying to have a successful battle. Great, so now while Claude is coding, we can have some fun. So any strong opinions as to whether or not we should be going for the fire hydrant Emojimon or the bear Emojimon? Fire hydrant? Sounds great. We'll head up here. I'm really curious what it's called. Alarmomon. Okay.
Perfect.
We'll take it. We'll go for our attack. Excellent. Taking 10 damage. Still don't know how much life I have. And I'm going to try to capture Alarmomon. Okay, excellent. This has been a pretty successful journey. We can go back to the Normoji. All right, excellent. Dealing some good damage. All right. Again, I really don't know how I'm doing, so I'm excited for Claude to tell me. Normoji broke free. Dealt 23 damage. Okay, I earned some coins. Excellent, and we're making good progress. We'll fight this Rockomon, sorry. Dealing good damage. I feel like my Pokemon is about to faint. I can tell. Cool, and then we'll go for a capture, and we're doing great. So here now we have health bars, according to Claude, so let's go check. I'm going to go fight Logoji, and now I have health over here. Let's get a round of applause for Claude, again. This is the information I needed earlier to see how well we were doing. Great, and then I'm going to capture Logoji. So I'm going to be honest, this is kind of what I was dreaming of. Like, I'm really glad that Claude Code was able to assist me in this journey. what I can do now as I wrap up my Cloud Code session is I can figure out how much that cost me. So I can just type in cost. And that cost me 92 cents to create Emojimon. So you can actually use Sonnet on Bedrock. And so as Erik was mentioning earlier, you guys will all get $25 worth of Bedrock credit. You can use Sonnet 3.7. You can use Cloud Code using Bedrock. And we're really excited to see 25 instances of Emojimon created by each and every one of you. Thanks so much, and happy coding.
Woo! Do you have a minute for some questions, maybe?
Yeah, happy to answer.
Any questions from the audience? We got one way over there.
Yep.
How hard is it to backtrack if you don't like the changes you made?
How hard is it to max rack? How hard is it to backtrack changes? Oh, great question. So especially as you start to work on more enterprise code bases, the standard way we'd recommend you using Cloud Code is via like Git branches. And so what you want to do is spin up a Cloud Code Git branch. You let it go, create some features. Cloud Code can even submit pull requests. And then you just review those independently of the main code base. And then when you're ready, you merge your Cloud Code back into your master repo. If you're a Cloud Code wizard, you can actually spin up multiple branches and multiple instances of Cloud Code implementing features on those branches, and then do a giga merge at the end. But that's not for the faint of heart.
How many lines of code can handle efficiently and still, give out good outputs?
How many lines of code do you mean on generation or on reading?
On reading, and then if we changes, say there are, in our code base, there's 20,000 lines of code. So how efficient will Cloud Code be with that?
So Cloud Code does really well on like large enterprise code bases. It's honestly where we've seen a lot of early traction for the product. Our team does a lot of kind of cutting edge research around knowledge retrieval and RAG and how do you traverse a code base effectively. So Cloud Code implements the latest and greatest. So especially for large repos, that's where what I was talking about earlier becomes really helpful, when you get to chat with the code base and implement those features. But anecdotally for large code bases, it does a pretty solid job. Figma designs can work too. And so you guys saw how I dragged my artistic vision for Emojimon. You can also just drag a Figma design directly in, right? So get the PNG, ask Cloud Code to implement, and then Cloud Code can do a pretty good job of one-shotting that interface or modifying your interface to get closer to that. And again, if Cloud Code doesn't quite get it the first time, you can just coach Cloud to get there eventually.
One more over there.
Yep. How do you maintain what, sorry? The regression testing. So Claude can implement or can execute terminal commands as well. And so if it is able to run tests, it can run tests to look at the results of those tests and then go from there. You can also isolate Claude Code to only edit certain files, and you can set certain guidelines around that. So you can, again, didn't have a ton of time for the demo today, but you're able to spin up like a Claude MD file where you can prescribe certain kinds of rules. So if you don't want it to go into certain files or you don't want it to mess with certain parts of your code base, you can also set those guardrails there as well as it goes about its coding journey.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. Yeah.
Yeah, for actual processing, it uses Agentic search. And so that's why it takes some time, as it will traverse your code base and figure out what are even the right files to look at in the first place. What it won't do is just send all of that in a big context window. I mean, maybe for Emojimon it might, because it was 3 files, but as you start to look at a code base with hundreds or thousands of files, it'll agentively search your code base, find the relevant files, and then feed that into the context window. Which is, again, yeah, to what I was talking about earlier, just around kind of our cutting-edge search techniques are used there to find the relevant code and make changes. I mean, in terms of how this works, it runs completely client-side. So you install it client-side, and then it just hits our API directly. There's no proxy or anything there. And so insofar as you're using the Anthropic API in your product or using the Bedrock API, you would just be hitting that directly. And so all of the work that we're doing for data privacy on the main API is directly kind of brought over to Cloud Code as well.
Cool. I know I just said one last question, but I actually have one small one. status messages it gives. I saw like one that was like pleading and one that was like just scaffolding, bootstrapping. Like who comes up with those? Is it coming up with those?
I believe that was the Cloud Code team that put those in. I don't think it's generating those on the fly.
Okay, they are amazing. They're amazing.
Thank
you. Awesome. Thank you, Sean. So next up we have Akshat from Codeium to talk about Windsurf. Woo.
And let's present. Okay, awesome. Thank you all for having me. My name is Akshat. I work on our product team at Windsurf. And Windsurf is an AI native IDE. Today I want to talk about how we think about building the best coding agent. Spicy take going right after the Anthropic guy, but I'll give it my best shot. So, before I jump too far into telling you about Windsurf and how we think about building, coding agents, let me just show you Windsurf for those of you who haven't seen it. So on first blush, this looks like a pretty typical IDE with one exception, which is this Cascade panel on the right. Cascade is our coding agent. And the word agent, typically we think about something that goes off and executes some task autonomously end to end. And I think that is very, very useful. And just to draw a contrast, we used to have copilots, right, which were not autonomous at all. They were collaborative and kind of assistive in the workflow. We actually think that the most useful manifestation of both these technologies is actually somewhere in the middle, right? It's not something that's fully autonomous or fully collaborative. It knows when to collaborate with you, and it also knows which tasks it can go out and do autonomously. And we internally like to call this a flow, right? Where you're kind of just going back and forth with the agent, and it's fitting seamlessly into your workflow. So let's see that in action here. What we're going to do is we're going to ask Cascade to build us a Python web crawler, and I'll just quickly show you some of its capabilities. So right off the bat, you'll see a couple of things. One, Cascade actually has access to your specific terminal, including your environment. It can download dependencies, create virtual environments. You can also see that it has a closed loop, right? If it sees an error in your terminal, it can actually go and correct its own behavior. It has access to your file system. It can go out and create files, edit files. And all the while, it's keeping you in the loop. And I think this is the important part. You can accept or reject any of the different changes that it has suggested. You can accept and reject specific terminal commands that it wants to run. And the idea here is that we really want you to feel like you're working with the AI, even though it's going off and doing things autonomously, because ultimately, it's important that you also keep the context of what is going on. And of course, this is just a small subset of the things that Cascade can do. It can even use grep and search through a large code base. It can go out to the web and autonomously figure out what information it needs to look up to help answer your question in the most useful way. And all of this is in service of one thing, which is what we call keeping you in the flow state, right? We've all experienced this as developers when you're just in that flow and you're just hammering out code, you're not running into errors, all those little things that you think about, kind of fall away, and you're really just focused on building that next feature. And that's what we want the experience working with Cascade to feel like, where you're just focused on the most important thing, and everything else the agent is autonomously doing behind the scenes, and it's helping you just focus on your vision. Some cool stats about Cascade and Windsurf since we launched. Since launch, which was November 13th of last year, we've written just over 4.5 billion lines of code. We've got about 670 messages coming to Cascade every minute, and this data is actually slightly outdated, so it's probably higher than this now, and then several nights when we've been woken up by many Grafana errors. So with that quick introduction, really what I want to spend this time talking about is what are our principles for building the most vibey agentic technology possible. And to start, let me actually frame up the problem. Because one part of the problem is that the models aren't smart enough, right? And there's a lot of smart people working on solving that problem. And that's partially true, right? Yes, that is one part of the problem, that the intelligence is still developing. But there's a second part of this problem, which is actually what I call the human-AI interface, right? We as humans, we have some intent, we have some vision in our heads right, for what we want to build, what we want to do. And today, the main interface between the human and the AI is the prompt, right? It's what we tell it in the form of text. Now, what we see time and again is that the way people actually prompt these systems is super, super underspecified, right? If I want to build a photo sharing app, I might just tell the agent, hey, build me a photo sharing app that does X, Y, and Z. Very few people will actually go out and specify, this is the architecture that I want. I want to use this framework. I want to use this stack. Here's the exact flows that should be possible. Here are the edge cases. It's a lot to think about, and you as the human probably don't even know when you ask first, right, that these are the things you want. So the issue is actually not even the model's intelligence. It is, how do we take this super underspecified prompt that has very little information and take it to a point where we've actually captured the full nuance and intent of what you want to do. At that point, we will also need models that are smart enough to execute on that vision. But it's a two-part problem, and I want to focus on the first part, which is how do we actually figure out what you as the human want? Because you're not going to tell us. Humans are fundamentally lazy, right? And the prompts that we want to say are short and concise. And so put another way, the goal here is to create an agent that requires the minimum amount of input. It can infer as much as possible from things like the current context, from the history of work that you've kind of been doing, right? It can go out and research the things it doesn't know. And ultimately, it can reduce the amount of input needed while producing high quality, reliable output. That is sort of the nature of the problem that we are trying to solve. So the first principle that I want to talk about is trajectories. And really with trajectories, what our goal is for Windsurf to basically read your mind, right? What do I mean by that? What's an example of that? So here, what we're going to do is we're going to implement a new function. And you'll see that we'll come down here, and we'll just tell Cascade to continue my work. That's it, right? A super underspecified prompt, just saying, continue my work. And you'll see that Cascade is actually able to go and infer that, hey, I just added this new function. What does the developer probably want to do? OK, you want to go use that new function in these existing other functions. You want to go add this field that's referenced in this new function to the form. All of these are things that I don't have to tell Cascade, because it's been tracking every single edit that I've been making in my IDE. And this is what allows Cascade, this is what allows the human to just tell Cascade, hey, continue my work. And that's kind of the shape of how we want you to interact with Cascade. And ultimately, what that trajectory should look like and feel like is a unified timeline of actions, where you're making some actions, the AI is making some actions, and these two things flow seamlessly into one another. And that's what we call a trajectory. And so the opportunity here is really deeply integrating the agent into the user's actions. That's why we also took the approach of building an IDE from scratch, or from a VS Code fork. The idea being, right, that the more information we can actually give the agent about the user's actions, the more seamless that interaction could be. So another example of this is terminal output. It's really important that Cascade have access to your specific terminal, right, with all of your aliases, all your shortcuts already built, because that's how you do work. And so a fundamental P0 feature for us was really, hey, Cascade should be able to run terminal commands on your behalf. It should be able to read those errors that are coming from your terminal and be able to kind of react to those. Cool. So really what this is going to look like in the future is that Windsurf shouldn't just be able to react to what you're doing. It should be able to anticipate your next steps, and it should be 10 to 20 steps ahead of you, right? So that when you ask, hey, build me a photo sharing app, it should say like, okay, great. These are the things that I know based on what you've told me, right? This is probably the design or the aesthetic that you want based on the other apps that you've built. Here's a few edge cases you didn't think about. Why don't you tell me those later? And then we can get to that, right? So it should anticipate your next action. Principle number 2 is meta learning. And this principle is really an observation that even the best engineers, when they start in a new code base, they're not immediately productive. right? Even if you have the most intelligent engineer, there is going to be some period of time where they're understanding the architecture of your code base, your organizational guidelines, how you write code as a particular organization. And this is exactly what we want Cascade to be able to do, right? It needs to learn over time how to write code specifically for you and your organization. And the idea here is like, today models are like very smart engineers, but they're very smart engineers who have no exposure to you or your specific code base. So how do we go about this meta learning, right? There's this concept of memory, right? Which is, how can the agent learn from every interaction? How can it learn things like, hey, this is how I like to style my code, right? This is how, these are the preferred tools that I use. This is the preferred architectural patterns. And yes, some of this you can tell the agent through rules and such, but a lot of it is just organizational best practices that are inferred and learned over time through PR reviews, learning pair programming, things like that. So how is this captured? Exactly, right? The opportunity being, create an agent that adapts like an engineer. So how are we going about in doing this? This is what we call Cascade memories. So here what we're seeing Cascade do is we're asking it to understand a few of the endpoints that we've created in this API. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to go out and it's going to learn about those endpoints. It's reading through your code base, retrieving the relevant files. But after it's done analyzing these files, you'll see that it says, create a memory of the application's endpoint for future reference. Now this is super important, right? Because throughout this prompt and all the other things you ask it, it's probably going to need to know about these endpoints. And by creating a memory of that, you're actually giving Cascade information that persists across sessions. This is a toy example, but you can see where this would be important if now you're using the same agent for multiple features, right? Or multiple projects across months of work. Hey, right, like that feature that we implemented 3 months ago, I actually want to go and add something new to it today. Does that mean I have to go and give you the entire context of what I did over and again? No, right? The ultimate endpoint of this work is that just like an engineer, the agent should have memory of not just this session, but what it's been working on in the broader arc of what you're trying to achieve. And so again, if you pull the thread out here, the goal is that Cascade will remember your workflows and execute them flawlessly. And ultimately, right, it will really be tailored to your specific organization. Cool. And finally, the third principle here is scaling with intelligence. And what I mean by this is, the one thing that's true is that models will get better and better. And really, our job is not to just expect that, but to actually prepare for that and design our product in a way that can take advantage of that continuous improvement in intelligence. And so really what that means is today you can do a lot of things that kind of act as a crutch, right? Because you're making up for lack of model capabilities. But instead what you want to do is you want to assume the model capabilities will get better. And I'll give you an example of that. For a long time when we were an extension and we had sort of a more Copilot-based approach, people really relied on humans explicitly guiding Cascade towards the correct context through things like @mentions and other sort of syntactical triggers, right? So if I wanted to tell Cascade, hey, go look up this particular documentation on the web, I might use something like @web. Or if I wanted to tell it, hey, look at this particular file, I would say and then @mention that file. Again, these are all just crutches, though, ultimately, because we want to prepare for a world where the AI can actually just infer all of these things based on the natural language. Again, we're trying to reduce the barrier between your prompt and your intent. And so when you infer the same thing with AI, it's all natural language, and you're not relying on sort of one-off features like @mentions and things like that. And we can see this in action. Today, you can ask Cascade, hey, look up the Next.js documentation, and you'll see that automatically it knows to go out and use a tool to search the web, get the right documentation, and answer your query. So again, this is just one example of how do we actually reduce that barrier between what the human is telling you via a prompt, via an underspecified prompt, and actually what the human's intent is, what you should go out and do. Cool. So as models get better and better, our hope is that the features that we create will be able to take advantage of that intelligence. And we want to move to a future where Cascade can generate PRs kind of end to end, right? It can implement your Figma mocks. You don't need to tell it, hey, go to this Figma mock, understand this frame, do this, right? It should be able to infer all of that and sort of do that autonomously. So in summary, these are sort of the three things we think about. Going back to that top level problem of, the models are going to get better, all the capabilities are going to get better. But the thing that is not going to get better unless we sort of invest there is bridging that gap between what you're going to prompt these models and what your intent is. And really inferring what your vision and intent is through things like, what files are you working on, right? What are the last edits that you made? What are the organizational best practices that you have? How do we tailor this to you? And that really happens through these three things: trajectories, meta learning, and scaling with intelligence. So again, where are we going with this, right? I think end-to-end PR generation, not too far in the future, right? Finding bugs before you even know about them is something that we're looking forward to. And really personalized development at the end of the day, right? Building an engineer that is tailor-made for you specifically. So with that, well, I guess random stat, we now write about 90% of our users' code, which is great. And with that, we encourage you to go try us out. You can use this promo code, AWS Loft 30, to get a month of Windsurf Pro on us. And yeah, thank you.
I gotta admit, it never gets old watching just an agent just fly through code like that. It's so cool.
Truly.
All right, we got time for, I think, one question. Who's the lucky person with a question? Daniel.
So, how do you communicate back to the user what the code proactively decided to do?
Yeah, great question. This is really a UX question at the end of the day, right? There are a lot of interesting UX things that we have done to make this clear. I'll give you an example of one case that often comes up. So we talked about how we used to have to manually tell the agent what context to look at. And then agents got better. We had this thing called agentic retrieval, right, which allows us to do retrieval a lot better. But how do we tell the user, okay, these are the things that we're looking at? For that, right, we had to implement some UX that we could easily show the user, hey, these are the files that the agent looked at. And if you want to change that set of files, here's how you do that. So it's really a UX problem at the end of the day. Another place, another thing that we rely on is sort of things like memories and rules, right? So you kind of saw earlier, you might have missed it, but when Cascade generates a memory, we actually have to create a UX so that you can go and audit those memories, right? Edit those memories if necessary. So there's a lot that's going on under the hood. The challenge, which I think is a UX challenge and a design challenge, is how do you make that all, it's kind of like under the hood of a car, right? If you want to pop the hood of a car and mod stuff around, you should be able to. Ideally, we want to get to the point where you don't have to do that. But in the interim, you have to. And the goal is to make that as easy as possible. Does that answer your question?
Yes, if I may as follow.
Sure.
Then how would it be that different devs who's using the same prompt would get different products out of Snowflake?
So I guess your question is why would it be a different experience for every different person?
Assuming Snowflake becomes next Google IDE, if everybody uses Snowflake, how would we start to have different products come out of the text? Windsurf. Oh, Windsurf, sorry.
It's okay. Like the AI, I inferred your intent. I'm actually just an AI. They sent me here to do this. It's a good question. I mean, ultimately, our goal is to give you something that is flexible, right? It will develop differently depending on your organizational context, right? So if you are in one organization and you write code a particular way, the set of memories that are created is going to differ, right? So it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all experience for everyone. At the end of the day, if you want to configure it to be a certain way, you can. But again, the goal is that you shouldn't have to go out and mess with memories. You shouldn't have to go out and mess with add mentions. Really, we want to autonomously reduce the gap between like what you're prompting it and what your intent is. And that should just happen automatically. Everything in between around configuring rules, messing with bells and whistles is just a temporary crutch. And hopefully we get to a world where that all just goes away. Cool.
Thanks so much.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm stoked. So my math is correct. You get $30 of Windsurf. 20. $25 of Bedrock. Like we're gonna be vibing. All right. So next up, we've got Michael. He's gonna talk to us about leading LLMs.
Thank you. My name is Michael. I'm here representing myself. I have a background in starting a few startups. I help companies. Oh, I should start this. Hold on. Here's my intro slide. Can you see it? Yep. So I help companies build great software. I build startups. I do a little bit of open source. Before we start, like everyone had a freebie, and I'm representing myself. I like biking, so if anyone want to go on a free bike ride with me in Marin County, hit me up. Not a joke, but yeah, that's how far we take it. The other thing before we start, like, isn't this event like the best ever? Thank you, Eric, and where's Andre? Like, it's my, all things web is my favorite event, so I'm really extra stoked to be here and talk today. So let's see. Before we kick this off, so I'm going to start by making the sentiment that the process for writing great software hasn't changed the last 2 years. Let's see how that ages. So, as a basis for this conversation of leading LLMs, in November last year, I decided to dust off an old project. I had a database that I built for the browser that was stuck in an old project that was dismantled. And I was like, I wonder if I can rebuild this whole database from scratch and make it much better and launch it as open source in less than a week. And, making it look awesome and all that. So we're not going to talk about building AI. We're just going to talk about building regular software like Pokemon or Emojimon or something like that. So as I started working on that, I figured, okay, we need to build a database. You need to think about a lot of things, like what is the API going to look like? How is what constraints are we going to have? What performance are we expecting? And all that stuff. So that would be the first piece of this thing. So I started talking, like, this is November, so it's like everything is better, but it was still pretty good, I could have a conversation. So maybe that took a day just to figure out, okay, how is this database going to work? What are my expectations? Like kind of the questions that the previous speakers brought up. And you look at this process, it has 6 steps. So the next step is, okay, now we have a framework. Now, if we write tests, and I'm going to go through this in more detail, but so every step kind of pushes, the output is used in the next step to really like make the app come together. And one thing that happens on the way is that you kind of like, you're on step 3 and you're like, oh crap, I missed something. And then you kind of go back. So it's kind of a cyclical. But once you're through the whole thing, you could think about like, okay, go through these 6 steps, and every time it's a new release. So you could push it to GitHub, and that would be the next one. So I'll show you a little bit, like pseudo, like how this developed for me. So it's kind of a prompt. You spec out the API. You give something like talk back and forth to them, and what you can see on the side, like the code examples, this is literally what it looks like. So it's just like, this is the API I want, but I haven't filled in any logic. There's just like, you can call the functions, but they're just going to return undefined, all of them. So then we'll skip ahead. Okay, now let's ask and one important thing is like I wrote comments. This is actually what I did. So it's like there's features, there's limitations. This is what I want to build. On the next one, okay. So now write me tests, and you can see the brown little square. That's like the output for every step that we're going to use in the next step. So we have a test suite. So because there's a spec, there's the inputs and outputs. We just write the test. And I wrote failing because like obviously they're going to fail because there's no logic. Let's keep it moving forward. So now let's do the AI. Use the skeleton, use the code comments, use the test. Fill it in for me. Like database indexes have been built before. Like I don't have to redo that. So let's see what it comes up with. Okay, how do we know we have something that is fast and good? And how do we know that we can optimize from there? Let's put some benchmarks so we can establish a baseline. It's very important. And what's the next one? So with that in place, now we can go back and ask the LLM, okay, change the code. We already have an implementation and we have the baseline. So we know if it's better or worse, whatever you do. So then, keep working on it. And last step is, okay, now everything's already written. Please write me documentation. And that kind of, so this process, like this is the last step, I'll jump here. It kind of just evolved as I was doing it, and I felt like really smart. I was like, oh, November, like I'm doing AI, and I figured out this process, and I'm going to make this talk that this is mind blowing. And then it just occurred to me, but this is what we've been doing all along. Like I'm kind of just writing down regular software engineering, doing properly, and we all cheat, and I do too. So, but like this is, I guess, the way it should be done. Yeah, my takeaway is that the process has not really changed. I'm curious to see if it will, though. I got a little worried with the first presenter here, and then the second it got a little better, because it was a little closer to where I am at. But I think this is more like, if we as humans are going to keep doing this, maybe if we just step up on this higher level, and then if we use Windsurf or if we use Claude Code, yeah, that's still just the tooling. So I guess my recommendation for everyone who's just like kind of writing code, including myself, that I've been thinking about this a lot, is just like we gotta step up and start being the managers of the AIs. So the sentiment is that the process is the same, but the actors have changed. So the actors are not us anymore. But we manage the process. Let the AI do the rest. So thank you so much.
That was amazing. I loved it.
Thank you.
I just say that that is the software development process. I did not value the software development process as much as I do now before using agentic coding tools. Like it becomes so much more important that you have like proper architecture.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this. Yeah.
Right, and it made me, like the two previous talks, it makes me really excited because I think this is going to, what they're working on is trying to do this so we have to do it less. But like kind of the sentiment I felt is the same, like if we just let LLMs, I think that's, I call it like harnessing the vibe coding. Vibe coding is great, but how do we put guardrails on this as it becomes big? And there were some really cool thoughts that I haven't thought about. So previous speech was really good.
We got time for one or two questions.
Do you see the future where we will start writing? Do you maybe see the future where we will start with the last step you had, documentation, more like a behavior-driven development? Are we going in that direction or not?
I like that. I didn't even think about it that way. The initial part where we do the skeleton kind of has to, like code comments is kind of a documentation that is very specific, but you're right, and then at the end I kind of threw in, to be a good software engineer, you should write documentation, and it's a little more wordy human, but yeah, it's a really good point.
So
We'll see.
More questions?
What do you think is the most important skill? Is it like architecture? Is it communication?
I think, both of them, are probably pretty important. On the engineering side, architecture is yeah, that's yeah, I would say both of them.
Seems like something that's missing from all three of the presentations is that first step of trying to understand what is the intention and getting that back and forth, right? Hallmark of a good engineer is asking the question
Yeah.
that actually gets to the core of the problem. So you had a much better prompt there, description of what you wanted it to do. But it seems like we still need that first step of like brainstorming and digging deep into what are you actually attempting to do. So I'm curious if you have a process at the very beginning that leads to that first initial prompt of this is actually what I want to do.
Yeah. I agree to that. And I'm still curious where it's going to go because I'm kind of clinging to the idea that I still want to decide on architectural decisions, while I think some of the AI players are, or another angle is that we don't care. Like if the UI does what we expected, like maybe we don't care what happens behind the scenes. And I'm still old school in thinking that I'd like to know behind what's happening behind the scenes. But yeah, I agree.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, let's go ride bikes, okay? Hit me up.
Yeah, well, this is like quite a mix. Like you're kind of coming in with like a bunch of software engineering experience and like how can I use these tools, and then you have like I really appreciate the Windsurf presentation where it's like how can we predict, how can we help someone become like a senior without having it's such a like dynamic space right now. That's really cool. All right, I think we have our last talk from AWS itself. Erik, you want to take it away?
Sure. Thanks again for all you guys coming today. I really appreciate it. This is a space that we really want to open up to lots of different tech groups and AI groups in San Francisco. So I'm glad we have a good turnout today. So my talk is all about AI and also AWS Amplify. So before we start here, does anyone know what AWS Amplify is? Okay, I see a handful. That's good. That's good. Okay, probably less people, but who's used AWS Amplify, like in some form or another? Okay, so some people here. So we're going to talk about how you can use AWS services, including AWS Amplify, to create sites, and how you can use that with AI. And then we're also going to talk about just a couple of products that we've released recently. So this is not going to be a product pitch, but you're going to get lots of AWS in this talk. So here's my agenda. We're going to talk about AWS Amplify Gen 2, some of the benefits, the data auth storage. So on top of just AI, you actually need to create your infrastructure. And AWS has been known as more like a DevOps company, but we really can do everything from end to end. And I'll show you how you can do that to create a site. And then we may even go into a demo. We'll see. Does anyone know what website this is? No one. Alibaba, yeah. So this is, of course, this is Amazon.com. So this is what you might see if you open up your browser and go to Amazon.com. And one thing to know is that we've actually been using AI in the background of Amazon for years, but we did it before it was big and huge like it is now, because we have this recommendation engine. If you go and purchase diapers or your favorite Kindle or anything like that, we're going to track you and see what you purchased in the past. We're going to recommend things for you in the future. So we've always had this idea of AI in the back of our minds, and we've been using it. And it's so great that in the last few years that now we have complete services dedicated to give you this opportunity to use different large language models and different services. So we'll get into that. So let's imagine everyone here now needs to create the next AI startup, and you want to create the next Amazon.com or maybe just an AI website of some kind, what sort of things would you need to create it? And of course, you probably need auth. So like some way for someone to authorize or authenticate who they are, what access they have. Data is important. So we need to think of like where we're storing that data. What kind of like, do we use SQL, NoSQL? How we're kind of handling that. We probably also want to think about storage like S3. Like maybe you want to have some files downloaded and you're going to have it somewhere. Functions, Lambda functions, some way that you can use compute resources to do some more things on your site that would make sense for your users. We need to host our site as well. And of course, that's why we're here in these amazing talks today, talk more about GenAI. And probably want to figure out how can we talk to these favorite large language models like Anthropic and see how we can integrate that into our site that makes sense. And of course, those of you any front-end developers here? Quite a few. We're just at the tip of the iceberg of all the things you probably need to know to create a website. Scalability, performance, what frameworks, agility, like everything you need to do to create a site, to maintain it, to keep it up. User experience is important as well. So it may not be a surprise to you, but all everything we've seen in these previous slides, there's an AWS service for, honestly. We have over 200 different services. You can build your site from front end to back end with all of them. And one way to kind of connect this all together is AWS Amplify. And like I said, this is a service that helps you build your apps. Like we have a tooling for it to create infrastructure as code. We also have tooling for it to connect to your front end. We have a hosting service, but we'll go through some of those. So real quick, we have a hosting service. Did everybody know that there's actually a managed hosting service with AWS that you can get today? Works with Next.js, React, front end. Anybody know that before today? Maybe a few people? A couple. So we actually have our own hosting service. And so you can deploy your sites. It's just a few clicks. It can connect up to your version control system. So you can just push changes and it gets updated. And it supports all your favorite web standards, including Next and the latest version Next. And it has a bunch of deployment options. I'm not going to get into it, but basically you can do everything that you would normally expect. Now this thing right here, this is a GIF that I have running. And on one side is a schema. So in real time, I'm creating a schema saying this to do, because this is just a fun to-do app. And on the left-hand side, my front end actually in real time knows that I've created the schema. So what I'm doing is I'm basically building a to-do schema. I'm adding latitude, longitude. I'm adding a priority for low, medium, and high. And as soon as I save it, the front end now knows there's a high, low, and medium. And then this is getting deployed to our back end. So this is just kind of give you a flavor of some of the tooling that we have. You can like create your schema in real time and have it be available on the front end. We have a whole bunch of authentication libraries. We have something called Amazon Cognito that you can set up for auth. And you can do sign up, sign in, multi-factor authentication, everything like that. We have a bunch of libraries to make that easy. We also have Amplify Data, which is the way we have a managed app sync service, which is kind of the default way that we recommend if you're using Amplify to store your data. We have a client. We also have something called Events, which uses this WebSockets API. It's kind of a replacement for it. I'm going to kind of go through some of these slides a little quick, but I'll offer the slides later if you guys want to research some more detail. But I want to get to the AI stuff, because that's why most of you are here. And then we have a storage. So we have a bunch of libraries to help you. Like you want to connect to an S3 bucket. You want to save some things. We have a bunch of things that can help you with that, including some really nice things that we launched at reInvent called Storage Browser, which is like a file system for your website, for your apps. And then, of course, Amplify Functions. This works with our Lambda, so our serverless computes, so you can do computing with it and schedule jobs, everything like that. All right, so let's look into the GenAI stuff.
So what we found is that we have this service called Amazon Bedrock, which has a bunch of different large language models, including Anthropic, Stable Diffusion. We just added DeepSeek recently. And so we give you one API interface to connect to all these different large language models. And there's a bunch of different libraries we have, but we thought for especially front-end developers, we wanted to make it easy for them to connect to, in this case, Claude 3.5, and just set it up in a way that you don't have to read through all the API docs to do everything you want to do. You can just have this one nice interface. It'll set everything up for you, and you can start talking to these models. And so we added some nice features, and I'll show you how this works. Like in this case, your helpful assistant, it obviously uses tool use, which is a way to like add functionality. It's kind of like the precursor to MCP. Some of you probably have used that. But it's a way to define like extra functionality inside when you're talking to large language models. And so we have built-in access controls too. So like maybe you only want authenticated users to be able to access this large language model. We have really simple ways. If you've used Zod in the past, this might look a little familiar. And we have a bunch of ways to just kind of connect all these AWS puzzle pieces together so you can just use it in one place. And one thing we noticed is that like a very common use case for large language models is to set up a chat or conversational UI, as we call it. And so we have libraries that just with a few lines of code, you pop it into your front-end code base, and then you can talk to any of these large language models that I showed you before, like Anthropic or Amazon Nova is our own internal model that we created. And we have something called AI conversation. This is a React component that you can just add to your code base, and then this adds the chat. And you can then do has a lot of different props. And this listing card is kind of interesting. I'll show you how that works in a demo in a minute. And of course, we love TypeScript, so everything's TypeScript aware. All right, so I'm gonna give a shout out. As you are creating your apps, maybe you don't use any of this Amplify stuff I'm talking about. We do have our own Amazon Q developer, which there's a couple of flavors. There's one in the console. If you're in the AWS console, you might see this little symbol on the side. You can click on it, and you can just ask questions. But there's also another Amazon Q developer, which is in your IDE, and it's like a VS Code, JetBrains extension that you can install. And it gives you coding recommendations. It's free with Builder ID. So Builder ID, by the way, doesn't require a credit card or anything. You don't have to have an AWS account, but you can just add this in here. And it's just a nice extension to do some things like you can have it look at your code, give you security recommendations, help you ask questions, things like that. Now, one thing we just released in the last few weeks is Amazon Q CLI. It uses Anthropic 3.7 from our friends at Anthropic, and it kind of looks like Claude code a little bit, but no, it's completely different in the sense that you do ask it questions, and then it will start interacting with your code base. And you can use this today. I'd highly recommend it. You just sign up for this Builder ID, have an email address, no credit card required, and you can just start using it and have it inside your code base and try it out. It's really cool because I know everybody's vibe coding these days, and I wrote a whole article. I was vibe coding and creating an app. Not as cool as the one we saw earlier, like the Emojimon, but like this one creates a VDAP, and then you just prompt it, and it just keeps going in there. So this like scaffold new application, and you call for content. Now here's a demo that I have. Are we good on time, Eric?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So I have a video, but I thought I would just YOLO it and just try it and see what happens. Okay, so I have a code base here. This is running this Amplify stuff I've just been talking to you about for the last 5 minutes. This file defines the large language models that I'm going to talk to. Of course, once again, we're using Claude 3. Probably should use 3.7, right? But I add the system prompt. You're a storytelling finder. You will assist the user in finding a story that matches the story string, title string, or ID. So we're going to give it a story. And by the way, that's just a very simple prompt. You prompt engineers are probably like, that's not very good, but this for demo, it's fine. Okay, so I need some audience participation. Let's think of a story together. Can someone shout out an animal, and don't say platypus, because that's the last 10 people have said that same animal from the last time I gave this.
Narwhal.
Unicorn.
Okay, I heard unicorn.
Capybara.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so we're going to create a story with a unicorn in an enchanted forest. And now what it's doing, it's going to use that prompt that we had. It's going to contact Claude 3. And then I'm using Stable Diffusion to create this image here. So once upon a time in the forest where magic pushed, pull us through, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we could read this. And I made it pretty short. So this is fine. Like, this is cool. Like, this is like table stakes for any large language model to create stories. And Stable Diffusion is pretty good at creating pictures. But what happens if we want to interact with this story? So we're going to switch to chat mode. And so this is using that conversational React component that I showed before. And now we can ask it a question like, can you find the story with the unicorn? Actually, can you show me? Maybe that's even better. Okay, so what I did here, sure, let me search the story containing the terms of unicorn using the list stories tool. So if we come back over here, I have these tools, which are a part of Anthropic. It's part of the API where you can use this tool use. And I created a tool use called list stories. And what this does is the story that I just created, I created through here. It's actually being saved inside a database. And this tool is going to say, hey, search for that story that's in that database and retrieve it and send it back to me. Okay, so it looks like it found the story. It says, hey, the story with the unicorn appears, the enchanted unicorn, here's the UUID, and here's the whole story. Now that's pretty ugly, right? Like you wouldn't want to show this to your users. So we can make it look much nicer. Let's see if we can do that. So if we go to the chat.tsx, we have something called response components. Once again, this is just React, and this is the AI conversation library. And I can tell it, hey, when you see this coming back as a story, go to this story card component that I created before this demo and display it in a nice story card. So let's see if we just comment this out if it works. So I'm just going to refresh it. I'm just going to copy and paste it. So I made some changes. Okay, can you show me the story with the unicorn? So now, what it's going to do is going to look for that same story, but this time it should see this response component that we created. Okay, cool. Wow. So now it found the story, and instead of like showing that kind of ugly text, I put it in this nice enchanted unicorn story format. And I can actually click on it. I can go to that dynamic route that I created. But this is a lot of like text here. Let's see if we can make that and summarize it. And one thing really nice about large language models is they're great with summarizing data, right? So that's pretty easy. I go back to my schema. I have something called summarizer here. I added it in earlier. I said, hey, your helpful assistant, you summarize stories. And now since I added this, I saved it, and now I should be able to summarize stories. So let me turn that functionality on. Okay, so you can see I commented it out, so let me uncomment it out. Okay, so from the power of Vite, it automatically refreshed the page, and now we have this nice, succinct, summarized story for us. So we no longer have this huge story, and now every time this card comes up in chat, it's going to be summarized. So those are a few of the things that you can do. I'll just tell one more, because I know we're probably out of time. Since we're using tool use, we can connect it to all sorts of things. So I connected to a third-party API called Get Stories, or Get News. It's like this, this Lambda function that I created, so it can grab the latest news. I also connected it up to a knowledge base, which is using an Amazon Bedrock knowledge base to do this using Elasticsearch. And so I said, hey, you search for knowledge of style. I put some free books in there, including Peter Pan. And so now, if I don't know, let's ask a question. Anybody know Peter Pan lore? Do you know what happens to the Lost Boys when they grow up? Let's see if it knows. So now it's going to use that tool use and talk to that knowledge base that I set up earlier. And it says that Peter thins them out. So you can interpret that however you like. That's a little known fact if you read the books. So you can see you can connect this to a whole bunch of large language models. It works, or a whole bunch of different large language models. You can connect it to basically anything with this tool use. It's pretty nice. And if we come back here, see we didn't need to do this. I have a QR code here just to do a quick survey. Unfortunately, no, I'm not giving away any credits for this one. But you can certainly put in, give me some feedback on this talk. Let me know how things are going. Thanks.
Woo! Amazing.
Awesome.
I know it's not GenAI stuff, but I just want to share this. That 2 days ago, I launched a little website, and yeah, the easiest way is just Amplify. So
awesome.
I don't want to do SSL. I just want HTTPS. I don't want to do all that stuff, and it just hook it up to my GitHub. Hello what repo, and it just figures out. It's like, oh, you're using this framework. This is how it is. So it's
awesome.
It's a nice
Thanks.
tool. Yeah. Yeah. Totally not planned. I promise. That was just cool. Any questions for Erik?
Any questions on AWS or anything? If I can't answer it though, I will get your LinkedIn information. And I'll get back to you.
Are there any templates on Amazon to get started even faster? Any examples if I were to go to the AWS website?
Yeah, so that's one thing we're trying to make better, especially with front-end developers. I know a lot of people don't like to put in credit cards and go through all these steps, and I worry about IAM rules. But we're just trying to get better with documentation and show how easy it, we have on our docs.amplify at AWS, how to get started with Identity Center. Actually, I'll give a shout out to SST. Any SST users? That's another infrastructure as code tool. Yeah, SST has really good docs, and they have actually a getting started AWS doc guide that's really good too. So I'll give them a shout out. But yeah, we're trying to get better at how do you get started with AWS. And I think amplifying, looking at our doc site, docs.amplify.aws is a great way to get started. And just give a shout out again to our Amazon Q and Amazon Q CLI. That product uses Builder ID, which isn't the same process as creating an Amazon or AWS account, that is. And you can get started with Builder ID for free.
More questions? I thought I saw another question over here, maybe?
Or at least free tier.
Does AWS Amplify has the concept of putting everything within my own VPC?
No, that's a good question. So the previous slides where I mentioned we have storage and we have auth, we have a ways using a infrastructure as code tool. It's called Gen 2, and you can go through there and create all your services. That's built on top of Cloud Development Kit, CDK. And you can then use CDK, create your VPCs, start adding everything to it, but you have to drop down to the CDK layer for that. So if you have like a more sophisticated use case and you want to use VPCs and put a bunch of services in there, an API gateway, then you would have to jump to that CDK layer to do that.
I try use Windsurf for AI. Building myself product called AI Lawyer. I finish my product, push on Amazon. But the problem about yeah, I like a basic computer science student. Sometimes it's difficult to start. My question about can you have some more online course to give some new person baby step 1, 2, 3? Because I know Ireland is have more experience, but for new user, I want to ask you, do you have more course for new user Amazon?
No, that's good feedback. Definitely, we need to do better at trying to make sure we get more beginners courses. I would recommend look at AWS developers YouTube channel, Instagram, LinkedIn. We have lots of different videos from our developer advocate group that are trying to create like nicer, easier step-by-step videos, how to get started with some AWS services so that you can get up and running quickly. That's definitely a feedback I've heard. People hear AWS and they're like, oh, I'm gonna have to worry about these IAM rules and security. But we are definitely working on like better resources to try to get that. And there's quite a few out there, you just have to look. But I would start with the AWS developers channels.
Also just the Amplify product. I don't work for AWS, I swear. but like the Amplify product is just kind of like a simpler version where like it does kind of the complexity under the hood.
Yeah. The Gen 2, we have this layer on top of CDK, but we try to abstract a lot of things out to make it easier so you don't have to like learn every single security rule. What's up?
Hey, I was curious, do you have like previews, like similar to Vercel?
Do I have preview, like
preview
hosting?
So every
Yes.
Git commit is like, you can check it out. It's really powerful in your team and you want to check out PR.
Yes, we have PR previews built in. You can built in with GitHub. And and we can, there's a whole bunch of Amplify hosting features. They just released WAF, which is our web application firewall. They just released SKU protection, which is kind of a way, like if you have multiple people going to your Amplify site and then some people are on an older version and then you push a new version, like they're going to be still pretty protected. So they have been just pumping out the features all the time. And PR preview, I think, has been there for a while.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Brutal, thanks.
Yep.
I have a question for you, Eric.
Yeah.
Actually.
Oh.
Why did you
This Eric?
Yeah. This
Okay.
Eric. But chime in, of course. Why did you decide to use Amplify over Vercel?
Let's go. Then fighting words.
Okay, Vercel, friends of all things web. I've used both. So like Vercel, I think is, even though you can deploy Next.js on AWS, Vercel is like, it's built for that. It's going to be the cutting edge because the people that are working on the framework are also at the same group. You know, they're going to have internal meetings together. So I feel like that, it's like purpose built for that. But for me, like AWS is, oh man, this is a really tough question. I think like I've been using AWS for a while. They were like the first big player. And then as things got more complicated, like there's lots and lots of services, it became like maybe to the earlier question, like the entry to AWS felt like you needed to go through maybe like a certification program or something like this. And then they came out with Amplify. I think it was like Nader Dabit and other folks. They built this thing like, I don't know when it came, 6 years ago or something like this?
Yeah, 2017.
Yeah, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like one-click deploys. Like, oh my God, like to the preview thing, like you could also just do branches. Like you could have n number of deploys to like a, what is it, amplify.app or something, whatever the. Yep. I like how you're just like, yep. I love it. I'm like, yes. But like you get those preview links of like your builds, like whatever you want your branching strategy to be, and it's like a nice UI. And then under the hood, you've got, you know, like S3 maybe is not super difficult to set up, but like you could also just not have to set it up. Like Amplify does that for you. So it's like Amplify is like, I guess, like the application development platform, like streamlined thing that just gets you up. Like literally, I already have my GitHub set up because I have like 8 sites or something over the years on Amplify, and I just like, I did go to Route 53 because that's where I set up the DNS or whatever. So just name server entries. And then I went over, I could probably do it in Amplify, I guess, I just, old habits. And then you go to Amplify, a new project, GitHub, select the repo, and then click go. Like, and I think like, yes, I want HTTPS. And then literally it's in the background. And I checked like a couple minutes later, it's deployed. Like that's why. It's really nice, it's really nice.
Yeah.
I swear I do not work for AWS.
You will
They
see
did
now.
give me $25 of credits. But yeah.
Great talk. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question which might be a little bit of related to the previous one. A lot of people just like right before this meeting are asking me, where should I set up my app idea? Should I put it on Bold, Lovable? Should I build it with Windsurf, with Cursor, with all the amazing tools that are out there? Usually my recommendation to them is actually go with AWS because that's going to stay longer around. Maybe they're one generation behind, but they're going to catch up. If they deprecate something, they're going to replace it with another. That's my monologue, but now that's the question. It's like the issue I have is like, how's the pricing for Amplify? Seeing you walk through the slides, I heard of 20 different services, and I feel like that might confuse people that I recommend them to use AWS services just because now they're going to be charged for 100 different services just because they touch this data store, they touch the other one. Any thoughts on that? Any answers to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So often there's some best practices when using AWS in general, and that is setting like limits, cost limits in your AWS console. That way you can get alerts if something goes over a certain amount. Luckily, a lot of the stuff I was talking about today are serverless, and you only get charged when you use them. So it's not like if you spin up an EC2 instance and then it just stays there forever and you get charged hundreds of dollars a month. So keep that in mind. You only get charged when you use a lot of these services like Cognito or Lambda. The hosting service, you get charged when it builds the site, depending on how much traffic. There is a whole cost guide website that you can kind of break down depending on how much traffic that you have and put it in there. I think we're very competitive versus other hosting providers that have been mentioned earlier, our cost strategy. So that might be another reason to check that out. But it's always a concern. You kind of have to do a little bit of your homework. There's actually some AI tools that people have been creating that say, hey, put everything, all the services, everything you have in here, and we're going to find how much everything costs for you. But just keep that in mind.
Any other questions? Any questions? Oh, clapping. Yes, clapping. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting us.